What was the cruelest thing you have done to a sim in The Sims? Where's the copy pasta where the guy set up a maze to the front door of his sim's house? So his sim would leave for work every morning, come home after work, but it took him so long to get through the maze. As soon as he got home he had to leave for work again the next morning. For eternity. The guy never get to spend a second at home. The game is called Sim Survivor. You make a house of 8 individuals, build them a spacious house, truck them all in, delete the doors, build fireplaces on every wall, have the Sims light them, build plants all over the house, essentially every square foot where there isn't a Sim. The place goes up like a tinder box. The Sims then have to put out every fire. Usually you lose about 5 or 6 of them to the blaze. Then the final few must clean up the piles of ash around the house. Here is where you lose a couple to exhaustion. The winner gets a beautiful house with a big graveyard in the backyard for them to go and mourn their butts. I remember in Sims 2 once your Sim died you could move their tombstone to a public place. So I created a park with tons of trees to make it look spooky. Then I made a household with the maximum amount of Sims, like 7 or 8, and killed them all by using those cheats to spawn meteors. I then moved all their tombstones to the said spooky park. I did that about 3 times until the park was full of tombstones and I would force other Sims there at night to have to get spooked by the ghosts. Another time I put a baby in a crib and built 4 to 5 layers of fences and walls around it, then set it on fire. This was to see if the social worker would get stuck. Turns out the social workers in Sims can walk through walls and babies can't die. I tried to make a utopia where everyone would be happy and playful in the forest. The only thing I provided was a toilet on one segment of plain wall, a fridge, and lots of trees. It was a disaster. People peed everywhere and we are hungry. I had an actual torture dungeon in my house. Stone walls, no chairs or beds, no toilet, no door. One wall was entirely window, and the nice posh room it faced had comfy chairs for the rest of the family to watch as the prisoner repeatedly soiled themselves and lived in squalor. I did something very similar, but my Sim was an artist. His house was a gallery of his paintings, but the upper floor was his masterpiece. 2 rooms with glass walls containing a man and a woman. He'd have big house parties, unlock the door between the rooms, and everyone would watch the prisoners as they interacted and eventually fell in love. The social worker continued taking away my children, so I locked the crib in a 2x1 room until the child hatched. Problem is that I forgot to open the room and welcome the child into the family. When I first started playing I messed up and put the crib in front of the door where the parents couldn't get in to feed it. I had no idea this was the problem and was confused as to why they wouldn't take care of their child. Then I left the room and came back to the child gone and the parents crying. I didn't know the social workers could take your child, so I just assumed it died. Then the couple got a divorce due to the problems they had in their marriage, met other people, got married and ended up moving in with each other. 4 people, 2 couples, living in the same house with kids. That's the way I found out they could take your kids. And side story, I ended up making Boba Fett come in and rob the place while falling in love with one of the women and then having an affair. It was a weird time. My wife and I were sharing a computer playing our own saves and both of us created Sims of the other. She died at a pool party, an accident, so I sold her headstone for a few Somalians. She still gives me shit about it. I made my Sim a sugar baby who turned into a black widow. She'd meet men at the club, bring them home, and get it on. Then she'd visit their house later, and, thanks to the kleptomania tray, just take a bunch of their stuff, then go home, and sell it to make rent. Eventually she moved in with a rich sugar daddy, and made him break it off with his wife and kick her out. Then the sugar daddy mysteriously died. Someone wild over his bedroom door, while he was sleeping, and he starved to death. And she inherited all his property. She went from whore to socialite in like 2 in-game months. Edit, words. Picked some Sims walking by my house to trap in a 1x1 square room so I could hang out with a Grim Reaper when they die. Once made a normal Sim and went about his natural life. Everything was completely normal except he always hated this one other Sim. Every time they met up there'd be an argument or fight. They loathed each other with a passion. Time went on and the 2 grew old. I noticed the nemesis had a family while my sim never married. So I tracked down his granddaughter, convinced her to move in, along with his nemesis, and trapped him in a small room next to their bedroom. I put up a full wall mirror to simulate a one-way mirror, and my sim spent the rest of his life making woohoo with his enemy's granddaughter while he watched from the next room. Edit. I guess my most upvoted comment and first silver are for me being a psychopath. Thanks. I was addicted to The Sims and my husband occasionally plays the game, so he made a Sims family in my game. As a joke, I dressed them all up as hot dogs. He doesn't play often, and I'd forgot about his Sims in the game. I turned the aging on in the game and all but one of his Sims had died of old age. She was still living in the same house he had put her in, and was being mercilessly haunted by the hot dog ghosts of her dead family members. Edit. It was actually really sad. Picture one sad elderly sim dressed as a hot dog sitting on the couch with an exhausted mudlet trying to eat a grilled cheese sandwich, while the hot dog ghosts of her dead family continuously made the sink overflow, which she continued to clean up between bouts of crying and passing out. My 7th grade English teacher told me he had created a replica of our class in The Sims, and removed all the doors, to see who really was the strongest student. Instead of cheating for money, I played the game with honor. I would custom create a spouse for my person, marry them, then have them electrocute themselves repairing the TV. All for the $20,000. On The Sims 4 I had a process of getting free houses, move in with someone then evict them. At first I didn't know I could evict them, so I decided to lock the inhabitants in a shed and leave them to starve to death. It was a husband and wife. I gave them one chair, no bathroom, and a radio that played the same song over and over again. Then I let them starve to death while peeing the floor and crying. I did something similar. I like to make Sims based off of characters and people, so I made 2 based off of Bruce Wayne and the Joker. Bruce Wayne was very noble and reliable, but I made Joker as evil as I could make a Sim. I really wanted them to live in the biggest mansion in town, but there was a family living there, so I moved in Bruce and Joker, and then slowly killed off the entire family one at a time. Burning, starvation, drowning. I did everything, and kept Joker and Bruce alive while living in the house. Bruce got super depressed, and would cry at regular intervals, while the Joker would point at him and laugh. So basically, I left a super depressed Bruce Wayne in a house, filled with the ghosts of his former adopted family and the Joker, who made fun of the family while they lived, died and in their afterlife. I didn't use the Rossabud Mothalo cheats, and made those duckers go to work every day. Then I wasted their money on dumb shit, like a fancy espresso machine, and made them sleep on the floor. Made him in my own image. I once made a huge frat house, all had the bro tray, with maximum Sims you can put in a family, 8 I think, sent one into town, to befriend a bunch of people, and then had a huge party with all those guests. I think the maximum guest amount is 15, so total 23 Sims in the house. Then I deleted the doors once everyone arrived, and let it fast forward, for days. I lost count on the days. I feel like it was a week, but I know 4 Sims died in the fire after one of my Sims tried to grill. It was a rager for sure. The guests were congregating where the front door used to be, repeatedly peeing themselves, and falling asleep in their own puddle of urine. My Sims would try to sleep in their bed, but guests would wake them up after a short amount of time. TL. Doctor, Sims frat party of 23 Sims where all the exterior doors disappeared. 4 died after a freak grilling accident and guests were peeing themselves and falling asleep in it. Edit. Small grammatical details. Edit. Added TLDR sorry it's long. The premise was this. Gloria Benning, a 60 and single entrepreneur moved into the home and neighborhood of her dreams, even though she technically couldn't afford the rent. The landlord however offered to lower the rent, so long as his deranged and homeless uncle, Moose Kangi, could live in the tool shed out back. Thinking herself a charitable soul, Gloria accepted. I'm unsure how cruel it is, but holy shit did my brother and I have fun taking turns playing as Moose when Gloria went off to work to screw around in her house. It was required that whenever Moose snuck in we had to say now it's my turn to be Miss Benin. Leave messes for her to clean up. Start fires, rock out to industrial techno, etc. I decided to run a MrCast style challenge with a household of 7 Sims and Gordon Ramsay. The Sims would partake in various cooking challenges with Gordon presiding as the judge. However, whenever someone got eliminated, I'd have Gordon lure the poor Sim to the back of the lot and stab them to death. Sims mods are great. It continued until only one chef was left alive, and then as victory I'd have them kill Gordon and end themselves. It was glorious. In Sims Medieval, I would actively make my Sim jump into the monster pit. I have a run household where every generation had one Sim die a death, while everyone else died from old age, until I got to a single child whose parents focused on maximum their career before having a baby, so they ended up becoming elderly by the time their child became a teenager, and they died a day after she returned from university. So I now have this young woman who is already damn near the top of her career who just wants to find love, but the ghosts of her family keep scaring away her lovers living in a big empty mansion with a private cemetery in the backyard. I have another Sim whose parents are swingers and they keep stealing his girlfriends, one of whom got pregnant, but they gave the baby up for adoption. He's a bit of a nerd and wants to work in the paranormal field, so maybe I'll get him and the rich girl to hook up. Once I had these Sims, they were married, and then the dude cheated on her, and they did it in their bed. She walked in on them and they divorced. But then he and the girl he cheated on her with got married, and she had to cater the wedding and do clean up. Sims 3 picked the hydrophobic tray, and then instead of doors, rooms were connected by small pools. He had to face his fears every single time he wanted to change room. Edit. Wow. Gold. Thanks kind stranger for teaching me that evil does indeed pay. In The Sims 2 I had a couple who was able to live forever. He was a paranormal investigator, and she was a biologist. Through their careers, they got items that allowed them to raise the dead and grow a plant that produced life-giving milk if it ate other Sims. They tricked another guy in the neighborhood to come live with them. He would get eaten by the plant and then raised as a zombie again and again, so the couple could stay eternally young. I had a normal suburban family, nice house, 2 kids, the works, except they also had a secret child they kept locked in a room in the basement with nothing but a sink. They only ever visited him to bring him a plate of old terrible food once in a while and to make fun of him and taunt him. Eventually, the kid's sink broke and kept flooding the room. Since he was a kid, he couldn't repair the sink, so it just kept flooding. The kid spent all his time mopping up a never-ending spill and crying. My best friend got The Sims before I did, so I used to play at her house all the time. We made our respective Sim families and would also play the default families. We soon started to notice that the couples were now fighting with each other for some unexplained reason. Then, I noticed my Sim was pregnant. That's weird, I thought. I thought they had to try for a baby on purpose. My friend also thought it was weird, but we decided it must be a hidden feature and the couple disagreed about having a baby. My friend and I traded off, and to our bewildered surprise, her Sim was also unexpectedly pregnant. Not only that, but her couple was also mercilessly fighting, and was no longer in love. What we found extremely odd was the husband kept mentioning an unfamiliar, black male Sim, immediately followed by the red minus signs, to signal a negative interaction. We ended up playing the couple through until the birth of the baby, who was a noticeably darker shade than the parents. When we returned to my Sims, we had similar results. Turns out my friend's older brother was into our game too. He had created a Sim named Homewrecker Joe, first name Homewrecker last name Joe, for the express purpose of impregnating all the other Sims. He was placed on a vacant lot, so nothing showed up when we would log in to play. I think this was Sims 2, when they needed a phone to communicate with other Sims. So without a house and phone, our Sims had no way to contact Homewrecker Joe. This really ruined my friends and my plan to have our Sim children grow up and marry. So with heavy hearts, we decided to let the social worker remove all the bastard spawn of Homewrecker Joe, which surprisingly made all the Sims very sad. My friend's brother thought this was hilarious, and we had to tell on him to prevent him from further sabotaging our game. 100 baby challenge. Edit. Everybody is asking for story time. So long story short, I had this mod that allowed you to have triplets and more sets of babies at the same time. So I was like 100 babies? I can do 30. Giving birth and getting the poor victim pregnant wasn't a problem. The problems were the toddlers. And since I'm a genius, I've even managed to have 6 toddlers in the house at the same time. BC, it cannot be that hard, right? Bellany. The only child I had at the time died because of a fire and the moth victim died 2 days later. BC, of starvation. Not only she had like 7 little dinosaurs to look after, she was also broke obviously. In the process, 3 toddlers were taken away by the social worker. I still don't know how we got to keep the other 3 for so long. Probably I had too many mods. My sim left us after 3 real days of the challenge at the age of adult, after 12 birth. // baloney. Don't sue me, English isn't my first language.